Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Penny and this is Penny's Small Spaces. I'd actually hoped to get this video out last weekend, but of course that didn't happen. But I did want to take a second and wish everybody a very happy belated Easter, and to my Muslim friends and family a very happy Eid Mubarak. So what's happening here in Canada? Well, our federal election is happening tomorrow, so we'll be electing our new Prime Minister. So there's a lot of people out there holding their breath this weekend in anticipation of the results of the election. Now, I am not a religious person in any way, but I am crossing all the things today. If you know, you know. I'm back in the friend's apartment today. We probably have 2 more videos after this one in order to wrap up this project. Ashley's birthday is in 6 weeks, and I am determined to have it done for her actual birthday. So today I'm going to be working on that area in front of the living room window where there was a desk and a couple of chairs, and then of course the drapery and the things that went on the wall. So we have a lot to do, so let's get started. In today's video, we're going to concentrate in this area here on the platform and in front of the large window. So I have a desk that I want to make with a chair. I have a little round table here in the corner and a larger, more comfortable chair here on the side. I'm going to start with the desk since that's the largest piece that's up on the platform. So I've just chosen a piece of wood that's 2.5 millimeters thick, and I'm just going to taper off on either side so that I can match the design of the desk that was actually in the apartment. So I have just measured off here the same distance on each side so I know how far back to taper, and I'm just going to use some sandpaper just to bring that up on a little bit of an angle. And here's a quick peek of what it looks like now that I'm done. Now in between where you can see the 2 lines that I've drawn on was a set of 3 drawers. So I'm going to make that section next. I'll start by attaching the 2 sides onto the base of the drawer. Once the 2 sides have had a chance to dry, then I'm going to just go ahead and apply some glue here on the front and back and attach those 2 pieces as well. I'm applying glue now to the top edge of this very shallow box, and I'm going to attach it to the bottom side of the desktop. I'm going to make sure that I center it in between those 2 measurements that I made when I started tapering down the sides. I've cut 3 equal size pieces from the thinnest wood that I have, and I'm going to use those for the 3 drawer fronts in front of the desk. These are not functioning drawers, so I'm just going to go ahead and glue them on. To make these little stoplight looking handles, I had some leftover drills from a diamond art kit, and I just picked one of each of the colors and just glued them onto the front. Next I'll glue on the legs, which was super easy because these were just wooden planks. Now I did taper down here up at the top and then a little bit on the same angle on the bottom so that they would sit out in more of a flared fashion rather than straight up and down. Now the last step before I paint is I have to create these little shelves that sat underneath these tapered areas. These look like they were made out of metal. I'm just going to be using some brown cardstock, and just to make it a little bit stronger I'm going to double up that cardstock, and I think between the 2 layers of paper and the glue it should be strong enough so that it doesn't move. After I glued them together, I'm just wrapping them around a toothpick just to give myself that curved look. You can see here that I only applied glue on one half of those two pieces of paper. I did that so that there wasn't any puckering or wrinkling when I made that little curve. So now that I have the curve in place, I can go ahead and glue that other side of those papers together. Now I can go ahead and glue those shelves on. And you'll see that I made the top edge a little bit too long. I did that on purpose because I wasn't sure exactly how long it needed to be. But once I've got it in place, I can go ahead and just trim that top section off. The space in between those two pieces of wood makes a nice place for me to tuck that piece of paper in so that it's straight and they're going to be even on both sides. Then all I have to do is add a little bit of glue here on the side and attach the paper up onto the top. I've added the second shelf to the other side, so now I'm just going to go in and trim off that top edge, and then we'll be ready to paint the desk. Now I painted the desk the same orangey brown color as the reference picture, and I think it turned out pretty good. I'm going to move on now to the office chair. So I'm using a combination of a couple of different materials. I'm going to be using wood as well as some matte board. Now, when you look at the chair in the friend's apartment, it looks like it has a metal finish to it. I don't know if it's actually metal, but that's kind of the look it has. And it's like an engraved metal finish. So the matte board allows me to use my embossing tool and to scratch in some of that texture that's on the actual chair. I've used that same texture process on most of the pieces that make up the chair back. For the chair seat, I'm going to be using one of each, a piece of wood as well as a piece of matte board. And I've already notched out where the legs of the chair are going to sit. So I have two longer pieces cut for the back legs and then two shorter pieces for the front legs. The chair legs have that same etched metal look. So I've chosen to use a very soft wood for the legs. It's not balsa wood, but it's almost as soft. And then I'm just taking this wooden file that I have from a manicure set, and I'm just pushing in very gently into the wood to make that crisscross pattern that's the same as what I've already put on the matte board. I'm pre-painting the base of the seat this metal gray color, and I'm pre-painting it because I don't want to get this gray color on the white that's going to sit on top of it. Once the paint dried, then I could go ahead and add the white piece on top of the wood. Next I'll add the back legs, and I did measure on my two legs, you can see where the pencil mark is there, so that each of them is going to go on with the same length on the top and bottom. Once the two back legs were in place, then I could add the two back support pieces for the chair back. Once the back legs were in place, I propped the chair up upside down on top of my 1, 2, 3 blocks just to give myself easier access to install the front legs as well. After I had given that glue plenty of time to dry, I went in first and painted the whole chair this darker gray color, and then once that had dried, I went over it with a lighter shade And I didn't do like a full coverage because I did want that dark to show through where I had engraved all of those lines. The two don't match at all, but then again, nothing did in Monica and Rachel's apartment. In the corner of the platform was this little quarter round table that held a plant. I didn't show the process of making the little table. It was pretty basic though. I just simply cut out a circle from some mat board, cut it into a quarter, and then just added some legs onto the bottom. Now all I have to do is paint it and add a plant. The next thing that I want to make is the little lounge chair that sat on the left. So for this chair, I'm going to be using a combination of some wood dowels, some foam board, some chipboard, and then of course some fabric to cover it. I started by cutting out the base of the seat for the chair. So this is just cut out of the chipboard. It is tapered a little bit, so it's a little bit wider at the back, comes a little bit narrower down towards the front, and I did round off the front corners. The seat itself is cut from foam board, and you can see I've notched out where the arms of the chair are going to be inset. You can also see here that it's smaller than the base, and that is because that empty space at the back there is going to be where the back of the chair is going to rest. I've also cut the notches on the backrest for the arms itself. And before I put any kind of upholstery on it, I do want to mention that I'm angling off the back of the seat off onto a little bit of an angle, and I'll do the same on the backrest because I want that backrest to sit back a little bit and not straight up and down at a 90-degree angle. I've cut away a little bit of the seat itself. And then if you look at the chair back, I've also angled that back a little bit as well. And now when you put them together, you can see that the chair back is reclining just a little bit. For the arms, I've cut 2 pieces of some 2.5mm plywood, as well as 2 very small pieces here on the far left that will support the armrests, and then I have 4 more pieces cut for the legs of the chair. You can see that I've made a small pencil mark on one side of the chair legs. I'm going to be pushing those up into the foam board, and I want to make sure that each of the legs is going in the same distance. I want to start by upholstering the seat and the seat back. So I have this small piece of quilt batting, and I'm going to use that for my upholstering. So the first thing I want to do is to just glue the top side of these pieces. So this will be the slightly larger side of these 2 pieces from where you've angled it onto this quilt batting. So I'm just going to glue those down with some Eileen's tacky glue. And then once the glue is dry, I'll just trim away all of the excess. Now I'm going to take these pieces, put them quilt batting side down onto the wrong side or the bottom side of the fabric. I'm going to go ahead and cut this into more manageable size pieces. You just want to make sure that you're leaving at least a ½ inch all the way around each piece. I'm just going to start applying glue on one side at a time, and I'm going to pull that fabric up and onto the back of each of these pieces. From there, it just becomes a process of trimming away excess fabric and pulling all 4 sides up. I know it looks like I'm covering up those notches that I cut for the arms, and I am. However, that fabric is loose enough that even when it's all glued up onto the back, I'm still able to push that fabric into that notch and attach the arm for the chair. So you can see that I didn't cover that piece that's going to actually be attached to the chipboard. I just think it makes it that much easier to attach it without all the fabric in the way. And I will have to put one piece across the back to cover up what's there. I'm just going to go ahead and do the same to the second piece, and then we'll have a look at putting them together. Now I'll put these two upholstered pieces to the side. I want to add an apron to the chipboard before I attach the two upholstered pieces. You can see where I have put a 3mm line all the way around. That's just a guide so that I can keep the apron nice and straight and even all the way around. Now I don't have a piece big enough to go all the way around. If I had been thinking, I would have cut that fabric a little bit differently when I was upholstering those two pieces so that I had enough. But anyway, I will have to piece it a little bit. So I'm going to start by adding a piece onto the back, and then the longer strip that you see there will cover the two sides and the front. So now I've attached one smaller piece of fabric to the back, and now I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of glue onto the chipboard itself so that I can fold it over, and that way when it's turned back over, it'll look like it's hanging. And then I'll take my larger piece and I'm going to start at the front. I'm not measuring, I'm just going to eyeball where I think the center is. And then we'll place that fabric onto the front and then wrap each of the two sides around. And it is long enough so that when I get around to the other side, it'll actually go around just a few millimeters onto the back as well. And now that the apron is fully attached, it's time to add the seat on first. So that's going to sit right on top of that chipboard, close to the front, because as I said, we need that space in the back to attach the backrest onto. So I'm using my round dowel here just to push in those areas where I cut the slot. I just want to stretch that material a little bit before I glue it down, just to make sure that there's enough room for the arms. Once that seat is in place, I'm just going to add a little bit more glue here to the back, and we can attach the backrest. I also still need to add that little piece of fabric onto the back to cover up where I've pulled that fabric up over onto the back of the foam board. I'm going to add the arms next, but I don't want this piece of wood to just be a square blocky piece, so I'm going to use my sandpaper. I'm going to round off some of those sharper edges, and then I'm going to round the front of it off in a bit of a curve as well. I'm not sure how I lost the footage on how I attach those, but it was pretty simple. I just added some glue in where those cutout areas were, right directly onto the fabric, and pushed the sides of the armrests into those grooves. And then next I'm going to take those two very small pieces of round dowel, and I'm going to push those into the grooves of the seat and use them as supports for the armrests. And now that both armrests are installed, I'm going to take my little hand drill and drill some holes in the bottom of the chipboard so that I can install the chair legs. I probably could have done this before I attached the seat onto it. However, it wasn't a big deal. It's just chipboard, and so that drill went into it fairly easily. Now I'm going to take each of those legs and, of course, paying attention to where I marked off that 3mm mark there so that I get them all in the same direction. And I'm just going to add some glue and push them up into the holes and a little bit into the foam board. So here's our chair now fully assembled, and all I have left to do is to go in and paint those wood pieces a darker brown. Before I let you go, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of some of the accessories that I made off camera. So I made a few books. There was some books stashed in these little areas here, and then I made a couple to sit on top as well. And then I made this round flower vase that sat on top of the desk. Some of these flowers are from various kits that I've done. I did make the little red roses for another kit that I had done for one of my other girls. I'm using one of these funky shaped beads that I have. It kind of looks a little bit like a radio. I think I can get away with it. So I'll put that on the desk as well. And then this ridiculously out of scale table lamp. And yes, it was that big in the show. To make the lamp, I had 2 cut off ends from a couple of spindles from another project. So I just added a small base and then used some cardstock to make a shade. I also made some draperies for the large window. I, of course, don't have the exact fabric, but I got very close. The original fabric was white with pink and blue flowers, so I thought this fabric would work really well. And finally, here's the space completely dressed. And you can see I've also added the amazing theater masks that Fatima was so kind in sending me. And I think they finish off that space perfectly. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this project as much as I'm enjoying making it. I'm looking forward in the next video to start working in this living room area. I'm not sure if I'll get it all done in one video. I'm thinking probably it's going to take 2. There's a lot to do. So until then, have an amazing day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.